Long one, go.
Hi, welcome to Queer Town Hall. I'm Nancy Hawk, the Executive Director of Basic Rights Oregon, and I'm really excited to welcome you to this week's Queer Town Hall. So we took a bit of a hiatus for August, and we're back. And this is going to be a shorter, but just as awesome episode, if I may call it an episode, which I think I can because it's kind of my show. But today we're going to talk about the Statewide Action Summit, which is starting this weekend, and we're very excited about it. And we have some amazing guests, and I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. Like always, I will go in alphabetical order, and I'm going to ask a check-in question. I'm changing it up because there was a hiatus. I'm going to use Tristan's question because it's a good one. So I'm going to ask you your name, maybe something about what you do in the world, your pronouns, and then is there a character from a TV, the movies, a book, a video game that you relate to, that you like, that resonates with you? And starting with you, Dominic, and I have to say, Dominic has been the man behind the scenes for every episode. This is his first time on screen. And very excited to introduce you as a guest of Queer Town Hall. Dominic, take it away.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm here and live on my own show, which is this weird split between one computer where I'm trying to keep the whole thing running and the other computer where I'm actually present. So, we'll see. If you see me dipping away, you know what's going on. But my name is Dominic. I use he and him pronouns, and I'm the organizing program manager here and sort of the logician behind the summit. And wow, yeah, that's a question that I would have loved some preparation time on. I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing recently. I feel like this is a cop-out answer because it's A, video games, which is not a surprise to anyone, and B, your character in Animal Crossing is just an avatar of yourself, so it's really not answering the question directly. So I'm going to say my character in Animal Crossing because he's got a super fly fashion sense, wears a bunch of really cute hats, and runs a pretty great island community for all to love.
Wow. Sounds great. And I added game for you because I know you. And Kieran, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kieran. I use they and them pronouns. I am the manager of the Transgender Justice Program at Basic Rights Oregon. So this is the 4th summit that I've gotten to help organize, and I've had this really fun job over the last couple of summits of reviewing the workshop proposals that have come in and just getting really hyped. Like every time I get an email and read about all the incredible work that people are doing and that they want to share with their communities, it has been a stellar mood boost over the last couple of months. And a character that I relate strongly to, I've been rewatching The West Wing because I like to imagine a political reality that's different from the one I currently live in. And I've always really, really related to Toby Ziegler in The West Wing, this person who's just like kind of grumpy, but like deeply invested in doing good work and doing it in the right way and not letting kind of the bureaucracy overshadow the ethics of a situation. So that's been a really powerful, he's always been a powerful character that spoke to me.
Thank you. And you're probably the least grumpy person I've ever met. So, but I'm glad you relate to Toby because Toby's great. Lex, I'd love to hear a little bit about you.
Okay, yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Lex Yakashowski. I use they, them pronouns, and I currently work as the chief of staff for a state legislator in the Oregon State Capitol, and that's what I've done. I've been involved in politics for the last 4-ish years after coming out to Portland for school. And I was actually lucky enough this last year to be part of the Catalyst transgender cohort that Kieran led, which was an awesome experience. So I've kind of been connected to the bro community in different iterations over the last few years. But today I'm really excited to be talking about the panel that I'm going to be doing along with Samantha Gladue during next week's statewide summit. So thanks so much for having us here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Tristan, take it away.
All right. I'm Tristan Reese. I use he, him pronouns. A little bit about me. I just quit my day job in the nonprofit movement to do my beloved passion work full time, which is running my consulting firm, Conglomerate Consulting, doing diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work all day, every day. So I'm feeling really excited about that, and really excited to talk about how folks experiencing marginalization who have to really shoulder the burden of doing this work day in and day out, how do we maintain ourselves through all of that work when we're asked to do many layers of things on top of whatever we're already supposed to be doing in the world. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I am embarrassed to say the character that I most relate to, I think that's been on mainstream shows, is Cam from Modern Family. And I feel like Cam and his family have gotten into many similar jams as me and my family, but he loves musical theater like me. He is very dramatic like me, and is just a little tender, fragile, insecure. And so I'm I feel like Cam really gets me. So that would be mine.
That's amazing. But you're so handsome relative to Cam.
How dare you? I think Cam is very handsome. I really do. I love a bear. I'm not going to lie.
Good to know. Good to know. Okay. So let's get started.
Wait a second, Nancy. Did you share who yours was?
Oh, I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Nancy Hawk. I work at Basic Rights Oregon. And I feel a little silly saying this, but it seems kind of almost obvious, but Mindy Lahiri, because from the Mindy Project, not just because she's the only South Asian on television, but partly because she's the only South Asian on television, and two, because she's serious, she has a serious job, but she's also super silly, and I feel kind of like that. So yeah, Mindy fan. And her fashion on the show is amazing. Super amazing. So thanks for that. And I just want to remind everybody that the way to ask questions of our panelist and of me is by writing comments in the YouTube stream. So please feel free to do that. And folks who write comments will be entered to win a Basic Rights Oregon Protect Trans Kid tote bag that our own Kieran will mail to you. So it's really fun to have staff on the show. So let's get started. Why don't we start with you, Dominic? Why don't you tell us, what is the Statewide Action Summit? What's it going to look like? What did it look like before, and what's it going to look like now in 2020?
Yeah, so the summit this year is really exciting. We're moving from a single day, sort of jam it all in, to 8 hours with workshops and panels and speakers, to this week-long event where we're bringing all of that content, but actually spreading it out in such a way where you might get to attend more than 2 workshops throughout a day. And you sort of pick and choose based on your availability. I think the most amazing part for this year's summit, and Kieran alluded to this already, is the breadth of workshops that we have. It is just kind of mind-blowing. We kept getting these applications and we're seriously? Feeling lucky and almost overwhelmed by the caliber of people and ideas that are coming in. And so I just super encourage anyone to take a look at the page. We'll look at that in a second, unless Nancy, you want me to go through it now. Of all the workshops that have come in, but of course we have 2 wonderful hosts here. We have some videos we're going to show throughout the show today of other workshop hosts, and yeah, that's really the centerpiece. Is that these are movement building workshops, they're identity focused workshops. Our speakers are nearly exclusively, our mainline speakers are nearly exclusive queer and trans folks of color, and I'm just super thrilled to be able to hear from all these wonderful voices throughout the week.
That's great. And can you give us a specific about when it's going to start and when it's going to end?
The organizing logistics, you'd think I would be quick on that. So it starts this upcoming Sunday at noon with our opening keynote from Ruby, of Casa Ruby, her own nonprofit in DC. And then we have a pair of workshops that will take place at 6 p.m. that evening, which will be flanked by an address from Aaron Waters, our own board member. And then throughout the week, we'll have workshops that take place at noon, so noon to 1:30, roughly speaking, all online on Zoom. And then in the evening, we have these evening sessions, which are sort of a variance between, one night is going to be focused on schools and advocacy, another night is going to be focused on healthcare. We've got a great group coming in from the Rogue Action Center to talk about a huge survey that they did in Southern Oregon of LGBTQ people with over 400 respondents, which is just, phenomenal. And again, this is all going to be hosted online. The web app we're using, Sketch, is just a website. It's sas2020.sketch, so SCHED.com, and the link is posted everywhere. And you can look at the agenda, you can select your own agenda, you can even see the workshop speakers, you can connect with other attendees and hosts and build a little network there. And, it's a one-stop shop for all that information. And we'll be finished up on Friday with our closing keynote at noon. That's
great. Thank you. Kieran, do you want to talk to us a little bit about what's most exciting to you about this year's staff?
Can I only talk about one thing? Because there's a lot that I'm really excited about.
Talk about all the things.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to leave it to sort of our workshop presenters that we have and the videos that we have to talk about some workshops that are happening. But a couple of things that I'm very excited about. We will be having a sort of meet and greet for folks who are family members and loved ones of trans folks. So this will be hosted by our Fierce Family Network. And that's just a really exciting opportunity to build community. One of the evening sessions is, like Dominic said, it's going to be focused on schools. And I'm stoked about this because there has been a lot of advocacy for LGBTQ and particularly transgender and gender nonconforming students in K-12 schools that has happened over the last few years. We're going to have a panel that's going to actually have two groups of students on it. These students live in communities in Oregon where there have been challenges that transgender and gender nonconforming and other lesbian, gay, and queer young folks have faced in their schools, either institutional issues or bullying or any number of things that have come up. And these groups of students have actually self-organized and pushed back. They've done things like form a nonprofit, form an organization to interact with the school board. They've done things like organize an entire walkout of the school building to push back against a discriminatory practice. So we're going to hear from these young folks about what went wrong in their school district, what they've done as students to fix it, to address the problems, and what their plans are moving forward. And we're also going to be hearing from some folks who did some advocacy to get a really incredibly progressive policy for LGBTQ youth passed in the Corvallis School District. And that's going to be really exciting to hear about with this sort of focus on how can you get something similar to happen in your community. It's really, really exciting. I think that hearing from these young folks who have seen a problem and taken action on their own and looked for support and pushed back is one of the most inspiring things that I've gotten to do in the last year is work with these young folks. I'm excited to have you all get to see them. And then we're also going to be having this session with Evangeline Weiss from the task force, who is familiar to Tristan. Yeah, I saw you. Evangeline Weiss is going to come and we're putting together a session called Unpacking White Supremacy, which is going to be a caucus space for white folks, really focused on how does white supremacy culture influence the work that we do in organizations and in our communities, and how do we as white people push back against that, and how do we collude with it and how that feels for us. And so it's going to be a real space for white folks to dig into our own experiences with white supremacy culture. I'm really, really excited for that session.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I just feel like I was kind of like, I love going to the Statewide Action Summit. I think people have seen me for years, often with my child on stage. And yeah, just sort of like getting to meet people and getting to know that folks from across the state are there. But I do feel some excitement about the virtual platform because we're able to bring people from all across the country who aren't going to be exhausted from flying to Oregon and who are just going to get to show up and be there. And I just feel like having, folks like Evangeline and Ruby Cortado, and, like so many amazing folks. And I feel really excited about that. And also just, the workshops are amazing. And I was going to say fire, which feels a little weird given what we've gone through in Oregon, especially the last 24 hours. And I did just want to address that our theme was fire because it has felt right, like the world is on fire in so many ways. And then we've been feeling that literally. I just feel like it's, we're not taking it lightly. It does feel like the work that's happening, the workshops that are being given are like, is the change work, right? And the part of being the fire of activism and the fire in our bellies to make change. And and I think the workshops are really indicative of that. And I wanted to start, if you wouldn't mind previewing your workshop first, Tristan, because I feel like it has this most beautiful title, what doesn't bend breaks. And resiliency is so important in this time and what we're all sort of facing in 2020 pandemic, Trump, all during an uprising life. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your workshop.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really trying to move into spaces where I feel uncomfortable. And actually, this workshop comes out of an essay that I wrote that I was fine writing and then terrified to actually post. And it was also called What Doesn't Bend Breaks: Resiliency Strategies for Trans, Non-Binary, and Gender Non-Conforming People in Medical Spaces. And maybe if you're not in the community, it wouldn't make sense. Why would you be scared to write this and post it? What I was really worried about is it feels so counterintuitive to try to teach queer and trans people how to survive the systems instead of trying to change the systems. We shouldn't have to be contorting ourselves into pretzels to figure out how do we advocate effectively with our doctors or our supervisors or our parents or our elected officials. They should change for us. And also, that's not going to happen today. And so realistically, we have to find a way to survive. We have to find a way to assess, when is it time to deploy an ally to do something instead of you? When are you the right person to speak up and speak out? If you cannot speak up and speak out because of what you're experiencing, because of power dynamics, whatever, how do you get through it? How do you survive? How do you recharge? I don't feel like I had spaces where I got to learn those things. And so I've kind of been making it up. And then I've kind of been secretly working with other queer and trans people to be what are you doing? Because it feels like we have to survive. It's the Black Panthers call it survival pending revolution. And so it's not one thing or the other, it's both. We have to find a way to survive today while we're transforming the systems. And so this is really going to be a space for skill sharing. How are other queer and trans folks figuring out what hill are you willing to die on? What fight are you going to pick and why? When do you ask someone else for help and how? And when the systems aren't changing as fast as you need them to, how do you keep getting up every day? How are you getting support, especially in a pandemic? It's not like I can go to Blow Pony and dance for 3 hours and have that little bit of time, where I'm just surrounded by 8 feet tall drag queens to release and reconnect. I don't have that right now. So what's the pandemic version of dancing or whatever else other people are doing? And so nervous to offer it because I am worried that people are going to say, how dare you try to make us change? We should just be changing the systems, but also really excited to try and have a space where people can say, yeah, this is hard and I need help. So yeah, that's the sort of story behind the workshop.
That's wonderful. And since I have you on screen, I know last year you're one of our keynote speakers. You've been to the statewide, formerly the Statewide Leadership Summit, now SAS, the Statewide Action Summit. Can you tell us?
Why do I feel like Kieran was vital in the renaming?
It's just true. No one was happier the day we became SAS.
All right, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you if you have any highlights or thoughts about that space.
I mean, so many. I think for me, what I really loved is I do a lot of work with young people, like specifically middle schoolers and high schoolers, but I don't do a lot of work with young LGBTQ folks. Usually I'm I do work with Lake Oswego school district. So I'm like in their high schools with a broader audience. But to be in a space with like queer and trans youth and also like pastors and other clergy members and also parents and also elected officials and also business owners. There is just like such a cool cross-section of Oregonians and now a cross-section, I think, of our country and maybe even outside of our country as well. That really is the place where I think this sits for me, is being able to just be with this really cool, all these amazing pieces of our community who just want to learn and grow and get better, and to get to learn from those folks as well, to get to learn from young people, to get to learn from elected officials, to get to learn from organizers, to get to learn from, BIPOC trans folks. It's just a really, really cool, powerful, grassroots feeling experience that I love.
Thank you. Love that. Yeah, I feel like it's so important, and just that like intersection of so many different parts of our community. And so while we're talking workshops, and Tristan was talking about like how we protect ourselves, right, while we're fighting for systemic change. And then Lex, your workshop sort of fits right in, is in the like how you fight for systemic change, and which is so important. And so do you want to talk a little bit about what you're going to do?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. I was just thinking that Tristan's comments, I think, were a great precursor, and that workshop is a great precursor for what I'm hoping to talk about at the summit next week. When you feel like you do have the capacity to speak up, speak out, we want to make sure that attendees have the tools and insider knowledge of how to really do that effectively. And so that's kind of where the inspiration for my workshop came from. So as I mentioned in the introduction, I've been working in the state legislature for about 4 years, and I've gone through multiple legislative sessions, and I always see, Basic Rights Oregon has a big lobby day where they bring queer and trans folks to the Capitol for a day to talk to their legislators, which is super important, super valuable piece of kind of the legislative ecosystem is advocacy days. But I think it's really important to remember that, as you are looking at like your capacity, your schedule, your other commitments, if you can't go down to Salem and commit a whole day to do that, like there are still ways you can make a big difference and stay involved and keep your elected officials accountable to you. And so that's kind of the crux of the workshop that I'm going to be leading, along with Samantha Gladue, who I had mentioned in the opening, who's the executive director of Next Step, also used to work in the legislature. And we're going to be uplifting 3 specific concepts. It's just kind of examples of some really exciting work that's happening in the Capitol. Actually, right, it's not happening in the Capitol right now, but in different spaces and places and Zoom meetings. What is happening right now is the interims of the legislature is not actually regularly meeting right now. And that's when a lot of the background work happens to develop bills. And so we're going to kind of talk about the legislative timelines, how bills are developed, what is the important thing, what is happening behind the scenes when the legislature isn't together, how you can get involved in, whether it be with a legislative lead who's working on a concept you're really excited about, or an advocacy organization, how to engage throughout the year. And in a similar, I guess, context as to what Tristan was talking about, is how can you make your advocacy work for you because oftentimes I think people have a very limited, and not due to anybody's fault, it's a very smoky mirror situation. I mean, the government, it's hard to understand. I've been working there 4 years and I still learn things every day. So how to figure out how you can advocate best in a way that takes care of you and takes care of your needs, because there really are a lot of ways to impact public policy. And so I'm going to be part of the presentation is also focusing on these 3 legislative concepts. One is one that Basic Rights Oregon is working on, the trans-panic defense. And then second one focused on cannabis equity, cannabis justice, and a third around voter reenfranchisement for adults in custody. And so next step is actually leading the charge on one of those concepts. The office that I currently work in is also leading a work group on the cannabis justice piece. And so we'll have some insider knowledge about those concepts, and also at the end break out into groups, and hopefully folks can kind of come together, brainstorm what they want to do next with this information, and how they want to push these policies and concepts forward in the 2021 legislative session.
That's great. It sounds really exciting, and I feel like it's much more than just lobbying 101. It's like going deep into the process and the work behind the bills, and like giving people solid tools on how they can support bills that matter to our community, which I think is so important. And so, Dominic, I don't know if this is technologically possible, but we did have some videos of some other workshops, some self-made hype videos by other workshop presenters, because that's how we roll on pennies. But yeah, is it possible to share one of those?
It is. Give me a second to do the thing that you usually don't see me do, which is prepare the audio setup in advance so that we don't end up with an awful echo. So,
okay.
Which video do we want to look at? Do we want to look at
How
colorism?
about Fatima?
Fatima, perfect. All right, give me 1 second and then it'll go live.
So I'll just talk a little bit about it. So Fatima works at CAUSA and has been one of our featured Statewide Action Summit speakers before. She has an amazing story as someone who has been fighting for undocumented immigrants for years, even though she's very young. And but the workshop she submitted was actually around colorism in immigrant communities, and how we as non-Black people of color, maybe people from immigrant communities, can talk, need to talk about it, need to talk about colorism, need to talk about what's happening in our communities and how it can add up to anti-Blackness, and really wanting to have that deeper conversation, and a conversation which, honestly is not talked about enough, I think, in our immigrant community. So I'm really excited that Fatima is doing this workshop. So you want to give me a thumbs up when you're ready? Good.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Fatima, and my pronouns are she, her, or ella, and I am a community organizer with CAUSA of Oregon. I'm excited to share that this upcoming Monday, September 14th, CAUSA will be presenting at the Basic Rights Statewide Action Summit 2020 on fire. This week is jam-packed with outstanding workshops and amazing speakers, so make sure you register if you haven't already. I would like to invite you all to attend CAUSA's training on the topic of colorism. Join us as we scratch the surface of the deep-rooted issue of anti-Blackness in non-Black immigrant communities. Our hope is that you take what you learn and unlearn and find ways to share it in your circles and continue standing in solidarity.
All right, we're back.
Thank you. Also, I just took a peek at the YouTube comments, and someone said, Tristan, I wish there was someone like you in my life when I was younger. So just wanted to give you that shout out. It's always really nice to hear those comments. So sure, it's not the first time you've heard it, but always good to hear.
Never gets old.
Yeah, it's so important. And yeah, thank you for sharing Fatima's video. And then we have the next workshop we wanted to highlight is about how we manage anxiety during COVID, which is a pretty big topic. Hopefully that hour and a half will be packed with knowledge. I'm sure it will be, but it's such a deep question and topic to dive into, but it feels like we all need all the resources we can get right now. So Dominic, do you want to play Melissa's video?
Rights Oregon has put together a phenomenal lineup for the Statewide Action Summit 2020 on fire, because it's been on fire, right? I mean, it's kind of... Anyway, so I'm going to be presenting on managing anxiety in the era of COVID-19. But personally, even though I'm presenting, I'm going to be in quite a few of the sessions. I hope you'll be there to join me. Thank you.
Short and sweet, but yeah, I think that Melissa has some amazing experience working with folks in the mental health realm and what tools we can use to really figure out what we need. And so I actually wanted to hear a little bit, just a little preview, a sentence about what the other workshops will be. Kieran, do you think you can make that happen for us?
You're muted.
Kieran, you're muted.
I pushed the button. I promise I pushed the button. It was not my fault. Anyway, you'd think after months and months of this, yes, I can definitely give a little bit of a rundown. I'm going to be looking at my cheat sheet, though. We are going to have an amazing workshop from the Alliance to Prevent Suicide called From Harm Reduction to Liberation, Creating and Identifying Our Roles in the Ecosystem of Queer Resilience. It's going to be focusing on strength and resilience in queer communities and the work that's gone into LGBTQ suicide prevention, which has been a big focus of Basic Rights Oregon's work over the last couple of years. And longer. And so we're excited to think about how our suicide prevention work fits into this sort of broader narrative of queer resilience. We have another workshop happening that's going to be about, so it's called Interrupting the Cycle of State-Sanctioned Violence in Washington County. So it's from this incredible group of activists who've been working in Washington County to shift the diversion of resources from punishment to prevention. So there's been a lot of stuff going down in Washington County over the last many months, and this group of advocates has done a lot of incredible work to try to push back against sort of racist policing and other issues. We've already heard about the one from Fatima and from managing anxiety. There is going to be a session that's sort of an intra-community conversation that I'm really excited. It's called Fire Brings Roots of Regrowth, Exploring Queer Spaces Beyond Identity Labels. So this is going to be a conversation about the way that labels and identity labels show up in our communities and how those have empowered us and also limited us in ways, and the ways that those impact our conversations with one another. It's going to be put on by the Cultural Resource, one of our LGBTQ Resource Center at Oregon State University. We have one that I'm super excited about called Dance, Improvisation, and Political Education and Consent Through Movement. It's a workshop called Stardust and El Sur from a wonderful dancer, artist, Morena Espiritual from Brooklyn. It's going to be focused on dance theory and development and analysis, political education, and some movement prompts. Looking at the history and political context of the music that folks are going to be dancing to virtually. All of the music featured in that workshop is going to be the music of trans and queer Afro-Latinx artists. I'm so excited about that workshop. I'm excited about all of these. Our friends at Forward Together are going to be putting together a BIPOC only space that's going to be focused on the history of policing in Portland and exploring anti-Black racism in communities of color. We have someone who is going to be coming in and talking about nonviolent direct actions and strategies. So the kinds of like street actions that folks are seeing all over the country, nonviolent direct action, how those come together. There are so many great workshops. I think I've covered most of the ones that haven't been highlighted here already.
That's great. Thank you, Kieran. Yeah, I just feel like really inspired by all these workshops and really excited about getting to attend. And I just wanted to emphasize and let everyone know that our virtual Statewide Action Summit is 100% completely free. And we tried to do most of the sessions in the evenings or at lunchtime. Times we're hoping people are the freest to attend. And so it's like, spend your lunch hour. You don't have to put lipstick on. Be yourself. You can be in pajamas. No one's going to watch you dancing. Although we want you to dance. It's just like really a chance for you to participate and get all this knowledge dropped on you. And for the price of free. Dominic, do you want to?
I'm just going to say it should be for the price of, please make a donation to support Basic Rights Oregon so they can do these things.
This is why you're such a good fundraiser.
Sorry, carry on.
So I think we're going to have a shorter show, so we're going to end like in the next few minutes, but I did want to give a chance for folks to either share one thing they're most excited about, maybe besides their own workshops, or anything else you want to share. And Dominic, do you want to throw up like a little bit, like just a screen share of what Sketch will look like? Because I know I was new to this platform, and maybe other people will be new to it.
Do that really quick. There's that for y'all, and then there's to go on live. Perfect, cool. I got it on both. So this is Sketch. This is our SAS 2020 webpage. Like I mentioned, you can find the link in the description of the video. But I think just what's super cool about this, and we'll zoom it in so it's easier to read online, is that as you make your way down, you'll see all of the actual workshops we've been talking about. So we've got, harm reduction workshop from the Alliance to Prevent Suicide. Melissa's workshop on managing anxiety during COVID is right here. And let's use hers as an example. If you click into it, you actually see her description, a little bit more about herself. And if you sign in to Sketch, you can actually mark it as an item for your own agenda. And then, you'll get all the notifications and updates, and we'll know you're coming. Already got 15 people signed up for this one, so that's pretty cool. And we'll post the link to Zoom on these pages once we're a little bit closer to it. Most, if not all of these, are going to be held on Zoom. And then in some cases, we might use another platform like YouTube in case we need to get bigger and get even more people involved. But all of that info is going to be on the Sketch page. This is really your one-stop shop for the whole thing.
That's great. And is there going to be a limit to the number of participants in each workshop?
There will not. So there's not formally one. If the workshop hosts themselves determine that they want to have a limit on it, then we're going to let them do that. But we've not designed the workshops with any limit baked in, so I don't expect there to be one in most cases.
Yeah. So I feel like folks should go ahead and sign up for what they want to participate in, and and not worry too much about being let in. But it's a little bit first come, first served, so might want to register. Just might want to go ahead. Yeah. So yeah, let's go ahead with our closing round. And I will pick on Dominic first because I've known you the longest. Number one thing you're looking forward to, Statewide Action Summit 2020.
Oh man, I'm looking forward to the Rogue Action Center's bit on the survey they did in Southern Oregon. I've been on staff at ROW for 5 years, and I've sort of, in a lot of ways, been the point of contact for statewide organizations and groups in Pendleton and Ontario and Coos Bay, and it's always it's hard because if I don't know someone and they don't know us, then there's no way for us to connect. And it's been like Southern Oregon has been, this is a huge part of the state that, when unfortunately the Lotus Rising project closed about 1.5 years ago, it was like, well, there goes our point of contact. How do we keep up? And little did we know, the Rogue Action Center was conducting this massive survey for exactly that reason. And so I'm super thrilled to see what they learned. And I'm just super thrilled to keep building those connections with statewide orgs so that we can all be more just in communication and conversation and provide support. Yeah, I'm super looking forward to that.
Great, thank you. Kristen, would you like to share?
Sure. I mean, for me, it's Ruby Corrado. Being a trans person in the movement for a long time, it's like Casa Ruby has just been a legendary safe place for trans folks who are working on finding the community connections that they need to move from surviving to thriving. And so I don't think I've ever heard her speak. So the fact that she's speaking here, of all the conferences I've ever gone to, it's like people talk about her, but I haven't heard her speak. And so I am so excited to hear her story and to lift up her leadership. And yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I've never heard her speak either, and I'm very excited. And yeah, that's the power of personal connection. And Lex, would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. I think I'm just excited. This is going to be my first time attending or presenting at the summit. And so I'm just really excited to hopefully have a chance to meet folks in other workshops and different participants. And also just, hearing about all of the workshops throughout the week. I'm really excited about Tristan's. Working in politics right now is also has been a full-time job. And so I'm really excited to just have some skills to take away or some resiliency strategies to take away from this. But I think mostly I'm just excited to be part of this. And thank you all for organizing and creating such awesome space for us to have this platform and connect with each other.
Thank you, Lex. Karen, I know it's going to be hard for you to pick one thing.
Yeah, well, I'm going to pick something that hasn't been talked about yet. Oh. I'm so excited about this. Throughout the summit, in the middle of the afternoons, we're going to have these informal caucus spaces, one each day. So one day will be a caucus space for trans and gender nonconforming folks. One day will be a caucus space for youth. If you identify as a youth, we're not putting an age limit on that. But if you're, focused on young folks, space for young folks, one for queer and trans people of color, and then one for folks who are living in rural communities. I think one of the most powerful things about the summit and the fact that it does bring in folks from all over the state is that isolation is something that our communities deal with. And I grew up queer and young in a very rural community, and I know what that isolation can feel like. And I've definitely felt that rising up again through COVID with sort of the challenges of connecting with community. And I know many, many people have felt that too. And so I think some really designated, really gentle spaces for people to just say, hey, what are you going through? Hey, I'm here to support you. Listening to each other, talking to each other, getting to talk to folks who have a similar experience is just really powerful and beautiful and touching. So I'm excited for those spaces.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, I feel really excited about the community we're trying to build and feeling like this year in particular, with all the workshops folks are presenting, that we're not on a 101 level. This is pretty deep. And I just feel like the thinking and learning is just getting broader and deeper, and I just feel really excited about all the folks who are putting their time and energy into making it happen and who are going to participate and hopefully grow our community, and also just really excited to reach those rural parts of Oregon that it's really hard for folks to come to, and really just feeling excited that there's so few barriers to participating. So let's hope that internet stays strong and that we all get to be together next week. So thank you, Lex and Tristan, for joining us today. We so appreciate you. And and I'm sure you're going to have a ton of people in your workshops because good advertising. Very nice. And thank you, Dom and Kieran, for all the work you're putting in to the Statewide Action Summit. Thank you, everybody. See you here next week. And and sign up for Statewide Action Summit. And
Summit.